Hi everybody and welcome back to my little YouTube channel. If you're new to this channel, my name's Amanda. I'm a diagnosed autistic adult and I'm 40 years old. I was diagnosed a few years ago and I'm hoping by making these videos, by making this content, it's going to help at least one person out there. You might be autistic, or you might be waiting for an autism diagnosis, or you might have anxiety or depression. Whichever it is, hopefully these videos will help you along the way. Now, I've talked quite a bit and in quite a few of my videos about autism, and if you're a returning viewer and you've watched some of those videos, you're probably screaming at me now saying, why are you going on about autism signs and symptoms again? And the reason is because a lot of those videos, having been my first videos, have not sort of rocked up loads of views. And so they've not got to the audience that I wanted them to get to. So people have unfortunately missed out on learning about the information regarding autism. So I'm wanting to push a few more videos out about autism symptoms so that hopefully at some point my videos will pick up. The algorithm will pick up my channel and it can be pushed out to as many people as possible. So if somebody's in need of hearing what I have to say, it's going to help them. So that's why I'm making more videos regarding autism and autism signs and symptoms. So just bear with me. So what are some of the signs and symptoms of autism? Let's start by explaining what autism is. Autism, otherwise known as autism spectrum condition, or Asperger's, they're both exactly the same thing, is a neurodevelopmental condition. It's a condition that we're born with, and it's a condition, therefore, that we have our entire lives. It's not something that we can just switch on, and it certainly isn't something that we could just switch off. It affects us in all sorts of different ways. Autism is a spectrum. You've probably heard, that's why it's called autism spectrum disorder, and you've probably heard other people referring to it as a spectrum. And that means that it affects every single person differently. So like any other condition in life or any other person in life, we all have different quirks, we all have different personalities, the way of interpreting the world we live in, and that's the same for autistic people. We are all different. So you've heard the saying, and I keep repeating it, if you've met one person with autism, you've just met one person with autism, because we're all different. So we're going to start from there. So as autism affects people in different ways, a lot of the signs and symptoms of autism can be different for each person. So just because I'm mentioning one or two of these signs and symptoms for this video doesn't mean to say that if you are autistic or you think you're autistic, you definitely will have this sign and symptom. But some of the most common signs and symptoms of autism are things like sensory overload. And that can be from bright lights and loud noises. Take, for example, when you're walking down the street and a car horn just beeps randomly and you get that startle response. It's bad enough for people that don't have autism, but when you do have autism, that hypersensitive reaction can send us into overdrive, and it can lead to a lot of frustration. It can lead to a massive emotional response, and it can cause meltdowns. And we can have like sensory aversions to certain foods and textures of foods. One for me is the feel of the sandy, flowery feel of the dusty stuff underneath a pizza, and I have to wear gloves when I'm eating a pizza. That's if I do eat a pizza. It's very rare that I will have something like that, because of the sensory aversion I have to it. And again, that's such a trigger for me that I'll avoid it. A lot of autistic people, we tend to have avoidant personalities to these sort of loud sounds, bright noises, anything that triggers us food-wise and taste-wise and texture-wise. Or a lot of autistic people might avoid certain foods because of the texture in the mouth, because of the way it feels. Or you might see or hear some autistic people having their food stuff separated, so they don't like certain things touching. For example, they might not like the beans touching with the toast because of the soggy feeling of the toast, and so they'll avoid it altogether, and it's this sensory aversion to that food. And so these are the sort of things that can affect us in terms of sensory triggers, and they can result in sensory overload and then extreme meltdowns as a result. One of the big signs and symptoms of autism is a difficulty in understanding and relating to other people. It's something that's affected me throughout my entire life. I've done a video on that. I'm not sure whether I've uploaded it yet, but it is coming, sort of my personal childhood and how I grew up. And when I realised that I was autistic, we can feel detached from other people being autistic. We feel like a small piece of the jigsaw puzzle that just doesn't quite fit. You know that frustration when you've got to the end of the puzzle and you've got that one piece and it's in the wrong place and you can't find where it goes. That's exactly how I feel on a day-to-day basis. I watch everybody having friendships and relationships and going out mingling and partying, and I can't do that. I'd love to be able to. You might see an autistic person and think that they're happy with their own space, and the vast majority of times we are. I love to be on my own. I love my own company, but at the same time I'm incredibly lonely, and I can feel sort of FOMO, that when you feel like you're missing out on something, it feels like I wish I could come back as reincarnate as non-autistic so I could just experience life like everybody else. And so autistic people, we can struggle to understand the thoughts of others, the feelings of others, the emotions of others. If somebody's sad, we can misinterpret that. If somebody's angry, we can misinterpret that anger, and it can get us into trouble or lead to problems. It's these sort of subtle signs that autistic people often miss, and often we struggle to identify other people's emotions, the sadness, the anger, the upset, and then we struggle on top of that dealing with those emotions. If somebody's sad and then I have to comfort them, although I've done another video on that, check it out on my channel. I will comfort the person, but I'm masking, I'm acting. It's not necessarily a truthful reaction to that situation. And so our response to other people and other people's actions can be really different to neurotypical people. That's people that don't have autism. And then there's a lot of people out there, not many, but there's a sizable amount that might mean an ill intent towards certain people, especially people who are classed as vulnerable, and that includes the autism community, whether you're high functioning or low functioning, and I hate those terms, that's why I very rarely use them in my videos. There are those people who may mean us ill intent, and a lot of the time, because we are vulnerable by nature, autistic people struggle to identify those people who may mean us harm. And so as a result of all of that I've just said, we can struggle so much to make friends and maintain friends or start a relationship. And when we do, it can be incredibly anxiety provoking. Just trying to find the courage and the strength to talk to somebody else can be incredibly stressful and anxiety provoking for us, because we're constantly, I am anyway, I can only speak for myself, I'm constantly self-aware and I'm constantly self-analysing. What is my body doing in that situation? What's my non-verbal communication doing? Where are my eyes looking? Am I making eye contact for enough time? Am I looking down? Do I look like I'm not engaged in a conversation? Is my body turned away from the person? It should be turned towards them if I'm interested in them or engaged in a conversation. Part of that non-verbal communication. All of these subtle body language signs, I'm constant, where it comes naturally to most other people, to me and to most autistic people, it's really difficult. And I feel if I'm trying to make a friend with somebody or trying to start a relationship or whatever it might be, I'm constantly self-analysing my own actions and what thoughts are in my head. I'm trying to pre-formulate a sentence minutes and minutes and minutes in advance during that conversation, so I can't necessarily tell what the other person's saying to me because I'm concentrating on what I'm going to say next. I'm sort of pre-scripting in my mind if I've not pre-scripted beforehand, and so I'm not fully invested in that conversation. I'd love to be. it doesn't flow. That's the word I'm looking for. Most people, the conversation flows, it just goes, people just meet each other and they just flow with that conversation. For me, and I'm sure if you're autistic and you're watching this, it doesn't flow. I'm too invested in what my body language is doing, my verbal and non-verbal communication, what I'm saying. Am I offending somebody? Have I come across as being weird to that person? Do I tell that friend or whatever I'm autistic? Will that make me look strange? Will that put them off? And there's all these things going through my mind, and it's just so overwhelming that oftentimes I will just isolate myself and I don't make friends. I don't have any friends, and it's not for not wanting friends. It's that it's too stressful for me. I'd love to be able to come back as a different person without autism and be able to do these things without having the problems. Leave a comment below. Let me know if you can relate to what I've just said. And then adding on to all of that messy situation that I've just said, sometimes we can come across to other people as seemingly very blunt or very rude when we don't mean to. So because we are very literal thinkers, we give very literal answers as a result. And so if somebody asks a question of us, they often expect little white lies as a response, and that's something that a lot of autistic people are unable to do in the main, because we're very truthful people. And so if we answer something truthfully, it might come across as being offensive. For example, if somebody says, does my face look orange with too much makeup, and we think that it does, then we might answer, yes, it's terrible. And the person might be expecting us to say, no, you look lovely, because that's what society in the main expects. Society, I've noticed, will give you a compliment and will expect a compliment back, and that's something that autistic people might not always do. And a lot of the time, autistic people, we can find it really difficult expressing and telling other people how we think or how we feel. And sometimes it's just easier to tell your family or friend or whoever's asking you, if you're in a social gathering, for instance, are you all right? Are you coping? And sometimes we might just sort of bury our head in the sand and sort of put our head down and say, yeah, I'm fine, when the reality of it is, we're not. We could be really struggling inside, but due to fear of people not understanding us or being rejected by society, and part and process of this sort of masking, it's intertwined with this masking scenario that we do, this camouflaging, which I'll come onto in a bit. We would say to people, I'm absolutely fine, when we might not be. A lot of us as autistic people, we have this fondness and this need for routine and rituals. Routine and ritual is something that I desperately crave for in my life every single day. Every day has to be pre-planned, and I don't do very well if plans change. If plans change, I will just give up on the day and nothing will get done, and I'll give family and friends the silent treatment. Or I'll fall out with family and friends and they'll know about it because I've not responded well to plans changing. And the need for control in our lives is massively up there with autism. Leave a comment if you can understand what I'm saying. Coming back to the communication side of it, like when we're in group situations or when we have friends or trying to establish relationships with others, it can be really hard for us as autistic people to know when to interrupt other people. So we can sometimes interrupt people randomly and it can come across to others like we're being really rude. And another thing as well is social distancing. Sometimes we can get into people's personal space too much and it can really cut us off from other people. And as a result of that, the other person can think, I don't like this, they're getting in my personal space. So as a result of that, we're not going to invite her next time to the party or to the get together, or we're not going to phone her or text her. We're not going to include him or her because we can just get a little bit too much in people's personal space. We're not doing it on purpose, it's just that we just don't understand that social communication situation and what is right and what is wrong in that social situation. I hope you understand what I mean by that. And now we're getting onto the eye contact part of what I was talking about before. I really hate eye contact. Although I've learned to do it, I worked in the National Health Service for nearly 20 years, and so eye contact is something that I've learned to do because it's a socially acceptable rule in society that you look somebody in the eyes when you're talking to them. Because if you don't, people think you're not invested in the conversation, you're not a team player, they think that you're bored, you're not listening to them, and all these different things. So it's socially acceptable to maintain eye contact, especially in a work environment or a clinical environment like I work in, because I work in healthcare. It's essential that I maintain eye contact with people. It doesn't mean to say that I want to do it, or it doesn't mean to say that I'm happy with doing it. I'm doing it to make other people happy, which is really a bad way to go about things, isn't it? When you think about it, we are changing the way we fundamentally are as autistic people to make other people happy, and in turn that makes us sad, and that's for another video, and that's to do with burnout, autistic burnout. I'll talk about that in a completely separate video. But eye contact is extremely draining because it's part for me of that masking process, that putting an act on in social situations, and it's incredibly tiring when you're having to do that, because you're making this conscious effort every single day, like I said before, with social communication. And it can really lead to burnout, it can lead to anxiety, it can lead to depression, it can lead to all sorts of problems, because at the end of the day, if we're making eye contact and it's making us exhausted and we're not being true to who we are as autistic people, the only people we're harming is ourselves. And this is what I'm hoping to achieve by making these videos, to bring awareness about autism and to tell people that if I don't make eye contact with you when I'm talking to you, that's fine, that's okay, because that's who I am as an autistic person. And then you always get those people, don't you, that come up to you and just try and start hugging you straight away and kissing you, and it's really nice for that person, and they don't mean any harm by it. And that's what people do in general. Humanity, human beings are essentially animals, and we're very social animals by nature. I'm not, because I'm probably not a human being. I feel like an alien most of the time, I'm sure you can relate. I swear to you, I'm not a human being. I swear I've been dumped from another planet and just been left with no instructions whatsoever. I'm not very happy about it. Even a Dyson comes with instructions, and aliens have dumped me without any instructions, so there. But you know, most people are social animals, and so they hug and kiss each other, but I really hate that, and I'm sure there's a lot of you out there, if you're autistic, you can understand what I'm saying. When that person comes up to you and you feel like you've got to hug them and reciprocate it, because otherwise, if you can't exactly go like that when someone comes up to you, can you? Because it comes across as being really rude and they think there's something wrong with you. So you've got to reciprocate it. But I find it's bad enough looking somebody in the eyes and making conversation. I'm not one of those people that will invade somebody's personal space. A lot of autistic people, or some autistic people, may do that, like I've just said. I'm one of those autistic people that likes my personal space. And so when somebody comes up to me to hug me, it's just incredibly invasive, and I just don't like it. A lot of autistic people have special interests as well, and that can be from the mundane. Well, I say mundane, but it's not mundane to me. For example, I love birds and species of birds, so we can have special interests that ranges from the more normalised special interests to the more unusual special interests. Different types of clouds in the sky. I don't think that's unusual, because I learned all about that in geography, but you know what I'm saying. The different types of rocket fuel in space, or I don't know what it could be. It's all sorts of different types of special interests, different types of Christmas tree routes. I don't know what it is. Tell me in the comments what your special interest is. I have all sorts of different ones, ranging from bird feeding, which has got me into so much trouble in the past, and things like forensics and crime scenes and stuff like that. I even had a special interest in prepping. That got me into trouble as well, because I was buying all sorts of different nuclear, chemical, biological stuff, and I had a knock on the door by the police, wondering what I was doing, thinking I was up to no good. And it, once it turned out that I was autistic and it's a special interest, it was just sort of like dismissed. But special interest can be positive, because if you learn something, you can use it in your career and you can flourish in your career. You could be a crime scene investigator, for example. But if if you're learning about the bizarre things like I was, sometimes it can get you into trouble. So it's always worthwhile, if you've got a loved one that's autistic and they are talking about a certain subject and it's an unusual subject, just asking them, is this a special interest? Trying to find out, is this part of the autism, or should I be a bit more worried about this special interest? But you know what, as long as the special interest isn't harming the autistic person or anybody else, I don't see a problem with it. I'd say the only thing you've got to watch out for, though, with special interest is that it's not consuming our lives, and that's something that can happen. A lot of autistic people, we can take our special interest to the extreme and we can become a bit obsessed, and so we can tend to lose sleep, and that's because we're learning about our special interest through the night, for instance, and we can stop eating because we forget to eat. We don't stop eating just for the sake of it. We forget to eat because we're learning about preparedness, about prepping, about doomsday prepping, for instance, or the different types of feathers on crows, for instance, and we can just self-neglect a little bit as a result. So if that situation obviously is arising, it's important to have a discussion with the autistic person and just explain to them that that you have to draw the line between learning about this subject and taking care of yourself. But like I say, the vast majority of time, special interests are positive, and do not, if the special interest isn't causing any harm to the autistic person, please don't try and take away the special interest, because I can only speak for myself, but my special interests are fundamental to my well-being. My special interest at the moment is making these YouTube videos and editing. I love the editing, and I would just hate for somebody to come along and take away that special interest. Taking away special interest will be like pulling out somebody's IV line if they're on antibiotics for a bacterial infection, for sepsis. Don't do it. It's fundamental to us. We need it. It's part of our survival. And that's all I'm going to say about special interests. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this little vlog, and I hope you understand a little bit more now about what autism is and how to tell if you think you could be autistic. Now, if you think you are autistic, speak to your family, speak to your friends, go and see your GP, telephone conversation or a one-to-one appointment, and just explain to them you think you might be autistic and why. And then they can send a referral to the neurodevelopmental team, and they can get the ball rolling with regards to referring you on for an autism assessment. Don't forget to hit like, comment and subscribe, and I shall see you soon for my next vlog. Bye!